July 1st, Canada Day, but also Moving Day in Quebec, a long-standing tradition and a symbolic day for housing rights groups. For the Coalition Contre le Logement, Cher, or COLOC, and the over 700 people gathered outside the Assomption Metro station off the Green Line, it was a day to protest against rising housing costs. The demonstration flooded the streets and went in front of the offices of the Tribunal Administratif du Logement and ended in Maisonneuve Park. This was the first organized protest of the new coalition, which includes over 100 organizations such as housing rights groups Frappru and Reclac, whose aim was to propose solutions to the housing crisis.
So the goal was to turn around the symbolic of July 1st. In Quebec, we all know people move in July. Some people find a good housing, some people don't. And for those people who have difficulties to find an apartment that fit their needs in terms of the location, the price, the celebrity, we want to be like the porte-voix today to say to the government of Quebec that we need three big things in Quebec in terms of housing. We need a rent control, a real rent control in Quebec. We need a program to develop social and public housing in Quebec. And then we want to put into the Charte des droits et libertés the right of housing, the housing right for everyone.
Students can be particularly affected by high housing prices. We asked Loïc Goyette, the president of the Quebec Student Union, who represent over 100,000 students across the province, why he thought the protest was important for students.
It's important for students and for also other people. We see that students often are first tenants, so it's the first time to be tenants. So often they come to an apartment that is much higher, that the rent is much higher than a regular person, than a person that lives, for example, 10 years in the same apartment. And also, because there's more renewing of the tenants in student apartments, there's also more opportunity for a landlord to increase rents. And we also have we're also alarmed to know that students might need to make a choice between living and paying rent and going to study, and we don't want students or just people to not come to study and not go to universities because they cannot afford rent.
It's not just students who are affected. People and groups attending the protest told us how they've seen people who are personally affected by high rents.
I work for a family organization based in Longueil, like I said, and we have a lot of members who struggle right now because either they can't pay their apartment or they can't find one that corresponds to their needs. So yeah, that's why we're here today, basically.
I'm here today because I am really concerned about this. I'm from Trois-Rivières, and we're a lot of people in Trois-Rivières living with this crisis as well. It's all around Quebec. I think it's all around Canada.
With many struggling with the cost of living, the term housing crisis is sometimes used to describe the current situation in Quebec and the rest of the country. Here's what Francis from the Reclac had to say when asked about the term housing crisis.
For us, we say from a lot of years that we are in a housing crisis. The term housing crisis still has a little problem, is that it shows or it pretends that someday we can get out of that crisis. We think that we can get out of that crisis, but we need a lot of structural change. Like I said, rent control, a lot of social housing as an alternative to the private market. We don't want to only wait for economic fluctuation to have a better state of housing in Quebec. We want real structural public policy to transform the situation.
Implementation of social housing is one of the main demands of the COLOC. But what is it and how can it help those in need?
Well, social housing basically means, housing that is truly accessible to anyone, no matter what your income is. And so most social housing, there's at least a part of it that's reserved for people where they have the rent at 25% of your income. So even if you have a very low income with rent at 25% of your income, you can still get by and everything. There's a lot of different things happening, some of which it's hard to know, are they really social housing or are they not? Because there's a lot of sort of financial engineering going on, seeing if there's other ways to make non-market affordable housing. Unfortunately, the government has gotten really into some of these things with the foundations where they say they're going to innovate or whatever, or they make a partnership with a sort of fund which also takes a cut and is supposed to make a profit off of it. Then maybe it's supposed to be more efficient, but not all of it is really social housing for the people who need it. So there needs to be more social housing built, and it needs to be real social housing. So housing that really is there for anyone who needs it and whatever their income.
And is not would you say not for profit is like a big or a great step towards putting in good social housing?
Yeah, I mean, almost all social housing is in sort of a not-for-profit model, some of it even a public model. Like, back in the day, there were a lot of sort of public housing, like the HLMs that they say in Quebec. These days, it's a lot less public housing that gets built, and it's other kinds of nonprofits. Some of them are cooperatives, some of them are, different kinds of nonprofits. But it's sort of variable what you get between the nonprofits. Some of them have sort of affordable housing, which is not that affordable. And so part of the struggle is about having, real housing that's truly affordable. But, nonprofit definitely there's quite a large nonprofit sort of housing sector in Quebec. And it's a good thing that it's growing. But unfortunately, there's less and less housing where, half of the units are reserved for people who have a really low income, which is, one of the core needs of, really affordable housing.
While this is the first protest of the COLOC, Steve says they hope to have more in the future as they try to ramp up pressure for the government to adopt more social housing, rent control, and to have the right to housing added to their Charter of Rights and Freedoms. For Local 514, I'm Jordan Hashi.